Are you looking for ways to incorporate your 12 by 12 paper into your card making without making a pile of scraps? Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com, and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get making. Today I have 12 by 12 paper busting template for A2 cards number 38. It shows you how to take a 12 by 12 piece of paper and turn it into some A2 size cards without any patterned paper scraps. Because it's number 38, that means there are 37 other templates already available. In fact, I have 40 in all, and you can buy them in a single pack in the Etsy shop, and some of them are available for free at jesscrafts.com, so you can check that out. Today's template is pretty simple, but effective for giving you a nice area to place a focal point, as well as a generally quick and easy sketch. So what we're going to do is start with a piece of 12 by 12 paper. I have Photoplay Dog Park Friends with these cute dogs on the back. I was drawn to this paper. I do sometimes purchase my 12 by 12 paper individually, and I try to think about something that would appeal to lots of different kinds of people because I like to donate my cards, and so I will also leave you links to that in the video description. But I thought, there's going to be plenty of people out there who would like a punny dog card. So I'll cut the branding strip off. I always forget that word, but I think that's the best word to describe it. And then we are going to be using 4 by 6 inch pieces of this patterned paper. This is double-sided patterned paper, but this sketch will work with single-sided patterned paper and will work with directional patterned paper, as my paper is actually directional on both sides. One side are the cute little doggos, and on the other side is some grass, which also has directionality. So we're gonna cut this down. We did 4 by 12 inch strips. We'll cut that in half again to 6 inches. And then this 4 by 6 inch piece, we are going to need a 4 inch wide by 3 inch tall piece, and then 2 pieces that are 2 inches wide by 3 inches tall. So we'll cut this in half to 4 by 3. This is our main focal point area for the card, where we're going to put our image and our sentiment, and then these 2 by 3 inch pieces are going to go in the background, and they're going to be overlapped a little bit. I'm going to choose to use the doggy paper in the background and the grass in the foreground, so that it gives me a kind of neutral area to put my sentiment and decoration. But if you wanted, and maybe you don't want to incorporate an extra stamp set or something, you could include the dogs as the main focal point, and then maybe not even need to add an image, just add a sentiment to go with it, and that might be a way of making an even faster card. But I'm going to do the opposite today. Now, in addition to cutting out the pieces of pattern paper, and you would repeat that process for the other 5 cards, because you're going to make 6 cards with 1 piece of pattern paper. So I'll cut it down to 4 by 3, or, cut this in half, and I'll have a 4 by 3 and a 4 by 3. Then I'll cut that one of them in half again to the 2 by 3. I repeat that process. Then I am going to need some cardstock mats. On the sketch is where you will find the measurements for the cardstock mats, and we are going to need them to be 4 1/4 by 3 1/4. And so with that in mind, an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, if I cut it on the 3 1/4 inch measurement, so 3 1/4 by 8.5, when I cut this in half again, it becomes 2 pieces of 4 1/4. So that works out pretty well. And I'm going to need 6 of them, so there's no additional scraps there, like tiny scraps, but I do need a bunch of the 2 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I can't cut those out nearly as perfectly, but I do tend to go to my scraps first. So in this case, I started with a whole sheet of paper to kind of show you how to get that really efficient measurement sheet, but when you're just, working off camera, certainly I recommend going to your stash first and seeing what kind of scraps that you have to get going. So I'm thinking, like, maybe could I get 2 out of this piece of scrap? Sometimes I will consider that. Like, if I could only get, let's see what size this is. This is 3 1/4, and it's a little bit bigger than I need. I only need 2 1/4, but still, that's a very small bit left over, and I feel comfortable throwing this out. So I will use that piece, but if this piece, if I need to make like several small bits left from it that I don't feel very usable, I might go instead to a larger piece of my cardstock to start with. So I will cut for each card a 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 inch mat and two 2 1/4 by 3 1/4 inch mats. So we started off the video hopefully a little slower so you could hear the measurements really clearly, know what to do, and then we can speed it up as we just kind of go to the decorating and assembling part. So I'm putting my mats down and then my patterned paper on top. You can assemble these in whatever order feels comfortable to you, but I need these two pieces here in the background. And then after I have those down, I can add my center focal point here. And again, you can choose to rearrange, and I know you're probably not using the same patterned paper as me, but whatever paper you want to either have a more neutral space for you to add your own embellishments and sentiments, or you take real advantage of the decorative pattern paper that you have. I am going to be using a stamp from Lawn Fawn, or some stamps from Lawn Fawn, to decorate my card today. I have Critters at the Dog Park. This is a quite a bit older stamp set from Lawn Fawn. I don't remember exactly when it's from, but I've had this for years and years. I stamped a couple of the different dogs and colored them in a variety of ways. Here are the colors that I used for the 3 different dogs that I did color. These are Copic colors. I colored them with Copic markers. You can use whatever alcohol markers you're comfortable with. I don't have any amazing tips for Copic coloring. I tend to start with the darkest color, blend out to the lightest color, and then I fussy cut these because I no longer have the dies that go with them, but I like the idea of the little dog sitting in the grass. You could, of course, add multiple dogs to this area if you wanted to kind of fill out your card more. I had originally planned to just add 1 dog to each of them, and then for our sentiment, I picked the You Are Possum stamp from Lawn Fawn. This came as part of the Celebrate Critters add-on. So this is the Simply Celebrate Critters stamp set. Sorry for any of the glare on these packages, but and I have dirty stamps, but that's okay. And so the Simply Celebrate Critters stamp set, there's an add-on that goes with it that has a bunch more punny sentiments to go with it. So that's where I found that one, but you could of course use one of the punny sentiments that came in the stamp set or something else you have on hand. But a stamp set that I used today that I really like a lot is all the speech bubbles, just because it has these tiny little speech bubbles that are perfect for characters, and you can get the dies. And I will often use the dies even without the stamps. I would even consider just buying this die set to have lots of small speech bubble options to have on hand. I did decide to go with both just because you'd then have a lot of sentiments that would fit inside of them, but I do think that's a really great general purpose stamp set. So I have You Are Possum and a dog, and I can mix it up and add the different dogs. And I did make sure that I stamped some of the sentiments with the speech bubble facing one way and some with the other, so that I could, depending on which way the dog was facing, I could have a speech bubble that works out well for it. I stamped them in Copic Safe ink. For the sentiment, I did stamp it with VersaFine, because sometimes it gives a little bit better of an impression. I'm sorry about that. When you're stamping sentiments, but you can of course just use whatever black ink you happen to have on hand. One last thing I wanted to mention, since I'm adding a critter and a sentiment here, I am more likely to then want to pop something up, and so I could use foam tape, or I could take the scraps I created. I mentioned earlier that I would be fine with throwing this scrap out, which I would, but I also often will just take some glue and glue a couple of cardstock scraps together and create a bit of dimension with them. So rather than putting foam behind my little critters or things like that, I can just put these little bits of cardstock, and so it gives me something to do with my scraps of cardstock so I don't have to spend money on foam. And also I feel like it's a little bit better use of resources. So the day that this video comes out will hopefully be Earth Day 2025, April 22nd, and I plan on running a little sale in my Etsy shop because one of the things that when I started making my paper busting templates was coming up with a way to like really use my stash and not just keep buying more and more and new, but to have ways that like I felt really comfortable enjoying what I had and making good use of it. Because like I said, these are no patterned paper scrap sketches. So rather than like every time I needed a card, starting with a brand new piece of paper and having lots of extras that I then had to figure out what to do with, using my paper really efficiently. So I understand that crafting may not always be the most earth-friendly hobby. There are many ways that it can be. I try to think about those kind of things in my crafting. It's part of my motivation for my paper busting templates. And I do have a video about different like earth-friendly things you can do as a crafter. I do have like a list of arts and crafts thrift shops so you can get supplies without buying new over my blog that I will leave you a link to. So in consideration of those kind of things, I will leave you some of those resources and run a little sale in the Etsy shop. So if you're interested in getting any of the templates in bulk, you can go check that out. I was able to keep going with the sketch and create 6 cards with some of the dogs from the stamp set. And I do have some dog jokes available at jesscrafts.com, so I realize you might be using different paper on this sketch, but I just wanted to mention it while the theme made me think of it. So I will leave you a link to where you can get this template, to the Etsy sale, to, dog jokes, to the thrift store list of places you can, like specific arts and crafts thrift stores. I have a video about like reducing waste in paper crafting, which would be kind of applicable to if you're watching this on Earth Day and you're kind of in that mindset of thinking about that, but also applicable to any old day when you want to think about how you can reduce your impact while crafting and enjoying the craft that you love. If you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.